Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Pedestal Life Society. So, if you're in the live stream, please take the time to get in the comment section just to let me know that you can see and hear me before we jump into this very deep, sacred conversation. Today, we're entering a conversation that is tender, deep, and sacred. We're talking about how a generational curse of unmothered women affect a woman's ability to feel safe, supported, provided for, and wealthy, and how the daughter who becomes conscious of the wound becomes the one chosen to break it. This is not a conversation rooted in blame or shame. This is a conversation rooted in clarity because for so many women, the wounds around money, self worth, receiving, and emotional safety didn't start with them. They started with women before them, women who were overwhelmed, under supported, emotionally exhausted, and unable to give what they themselves never received. Today, I want to help you understand how that fracture affects the wealth and why you are the one that's called to repair it. So take a deep breath, let your shoulders soften, let your heart open. You deserve this level of truth. A generational curse is not a punishment or a supernatural force. It is simply a pattern that no one in the lineage had the chance, the resources, or the emotional capacity to interrupt. When a mother doesn't fully raise her children, whether because she was absent, overwhelmed, emotionally unavailable, or caught in her own unhealed life, the daughter receives more than just the practical effects. She receives an energetic imprint, a nervous system imprint, a emotional blueprint that says you must do everything alone. You must not need. You must survive. You must be strong in ways that cost you softness. Being unmothered doesn't always look like abandonment. Sometimes it looks like a mother who loved you but couldn't emotionally show up. Sometimes it looks like a mother who was physically present but spiritually unavailable. Sometimes it looks like a mother who never learned how to mother because her own mother never taught her. And this becomes a curse. Not the woman it's herself, but the wound that passed from her to you. See, I saw this curse in my own family. I saw the way the feminine line had been fractured long before I was born. I watched women of my lineage, of my bloodline, who were incredibly strong, incredibly resourceful, and incredibly loving, but who carried their entire lives on their backs. I saw women who raised themselves, even when trying or while trying to raise others. I saw women whose softness was replaced with survival because softness had never been safe. I saw women who handled everything because they never had anyone to help them. And I saw little girls growing into women who never learned how to ask for anything, how to receive anything, or how to feel chosen. So I'm sharing this without details because the story is not about what happened. It's about the emotional inheritance that it created. The fracture was clear: a break in the feminine, a gap in mothering, a missing blueprint of nurturing and emotional safety. I didn't have the language for it when I was young, but I could feel it, the distance, the striving, the silence, the exhaustion, the armor. And I remember sensing even then that something in the line was unhealed, something deeper than anyone spoke about. As I grew older, I realized the fracture didn't just shape the emotional lives of the women before me, it shaped their relationships with money. The women in my family were hardworking but tired, resourceful but undersupported, strong but unseen. They thrived, survived beautifully, but they never had the chance to truly live. In many ways, I inherited that emotional assignment without even realizing it. That was the moment I understood this was a generational curse. And one day, at 12 years old, it really became clear to me that I was the daughter meant to break it. When my spiritual gifts of patterns start to show up, being unmothered doesn't only live in the mind, it lives in the nervous system. When a child grows up without consistent nurturing, affection, attunement, or emotional presence, the body learns to live in a subtle state of survival. The breath becomes shallow, the shoulders hold tension, the mind stays alert, the heart stays guarded, the intuition becomes quiet. The body doesn't feel safe resting, receiving, or softening. A woman who grew up without maternal warmth often develops an internal identity that says, I'm on my own. That identity becomes her default setting. And this is where the wealth impact begins because you cannot fully receive anything love, money, help, protection, or even abundance when your body is braced for disappointment or abandonment. Women with mother wounds often become hyper independent, not because they want to be, but because their body believes it is the only option. Wealth is not just financial, it is emotional, energetic, spiritual, and somatic. To receive wealth, a woman must feel safe being supported, safe being seen, safe receiving more than the bare minimum, and safe expanding into abundance. So I'm going to pause right here just to make sure that we have everything working properly. Let me know if you can see and hear me. If you're in the chat, you can drop down into the comment section. But a mother wound teaches the opposite. It teaches women to shrink, to self protect, to carry, to be the strong one, and to prove her worth. It disconnects her from her feminine energy, the very energy that magnetizes money effortlessly. Women with mother wounds often struggle with wealth because they learn to earn everything through labor instead of receiving through alignment. They learn to be responsible for everyone else, which keeps them from being responsible for their own desires. They learn to accept crumbs emotionally, and that pattern spills into your finances, accepting small checks, small opportunities, small raises, small abundance. They learn that rest is unsafe, even though rest is where your intuition, creativity, vision, and the sources of wealth actually lives. And the most heartbreaking part is that these patterns feel normal. They feel like just life, when in reality, they are symptoms of the generational mother wound. It is symptoms of the fracture in the lineage. It is symptoms of you not getting the support, nurture, and care that you deserved as a child. Just what I needed, really timely. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for letting me know that, because I was like, I want to make sure that you can hear and there's nothing wrong with the audio. Women who grew up with a fractured mother bond carry a particular identity, the identity of the self sufficient daughter. She is the daughter who holds herself when she cries, the girl who comforts herself in silence, the girl who grows up too fast, the girl who doesn't ask for help, the girl who takes care of others before ever thinking about herself. She becomes the woman who carries emotional weight for everyone, who becomes everyone's safe space while having none for herself. In that moment, and I know for me personally, that identity felt noble. It felt like I was a caring person. It felt like I was like had a higher calling just to take care of everyone. But I failed myself because it still was putting me in a space where I felt like I was in prison, because it keeps women in roles of emotional labor that drain their time, their energy, their creativity, and their wealth capacity. Because wealth requires space, not emotional exhaustion. Wealth requires boundaries, not self-abandonment. Wealth requires worthiness, not being a matron, not self-abandonment, not losing yourself in the process. And wealth requires receiving, not overgiving. Remember, I said at 12 years old, my spiritual gift of pattern recognition started to come in, and I could literally see where the feminine fracture happened, and we started the generational curse starts to play out every generation in the feminine line. And so when I started to recognize that, I did what a woman does when she feels or is called to do as a chosen daughter, is to reject the generational curse. I know that's kind of heavy, right? Because when you are, when you start to really analyze and look at your lineage and look and you start finding the fractures in that lineage, and you start realizing there's a curse that's following our family dynamics, every single generation, at least one person is experiencing that very thing. And then you choose to carry that heaviness and that burden of being the curse breaker or being what they call the black sheep. And when I recognized this at 12 years old, it may sound young, but I had already experienced being parentified. I had already experienced being the primary caregiver for my siblings. I had already experienced the heaviness of being a parent at that young age. So when I saw it, and I saw not just a fracture in the feminine, I also saw a fracture in the masculine. But we're going to focus on just the feminine in this video, okay? And I started to really understand that I was the one that was meant to shift the story. I remember at 12 feeling very overwhelmed, exhausted, and stretched thin by the responsibilities I already carried, and also very angry that I had to be the curse breaker. Like, why me kind of energy, okay? I remember that very moment where I paused and I placed my hand on my heart and I felt into this deep intuitive state, this knowing that you don't have to repeat where you come from. You were born to end what was endured. It wasn't a loud revelation. It wasn't dramatic. It was a soft clarity, a divine whisper, a sacred truth. I realized that I was the first woman in my lineage with the awareness, the capacity, and the emotional tools to break the curse. And that was at 12 years old. I realized that I had the ability to stop living by survival patterns that were older than me. I realized that healing wasn't just something I wanted, it was something I was chosen for. In those moments, I could feel the weight of my bloodline. my lineage's history. And I could feel it kind of lifting when I knew that I had the confidence to remove it. And that was at 12. Not as a burden, but as a profound responsibility. I made a quiet promise, not just to myself, but to every woman who came before me and every woman who will come after me, that that story ends with me. I journaled on this yesterday as a first daughter. I'm not actually used to providing for everyone. I'm now learning to receive, even in my mind, my mid 30s. I journaled on this yesterday. I'm in this, okay, it just put it. Okay, I journaled on this yesterday. I'm in my mid 30s and an engineer. I'm not used to receiving help because I always provide for everyone. You're helping some of us in ways we couldn't express in words. I am happy about that because in 2026, I'm pushing myself for more transformations in the pedestal wife community. And I know that means I need to reveal another layer. That means that I need to show up in a more, even more authentic than I have been. I need to come even harder. Instead of me helping on social media, I'm going to go into a phase of leading. But I realized that there was a deep issue in my lineage, and I knew that I could be the one that could break it. I knew that I could be the one to correct it. I knew that I could bear the burden. I don't want to get crying up here on this internet. And the responsibility of being a curse breaker. Rituals break generational curses because they create new emotional patterns in the very places the old patterns lived. A generational curse is repeated through unconscious habits, emotional reflexes, and inherited beliefs. Rituals interrupt that autopilot. When you sit with a candle, place your hand on your heart, breathe deeply, or you speak an intention, you are telling your nervous system, we are doing something different now. Those moments of ritual create safety inside the body, and safety is the soil where new choices grow. See, the thing is, this is why I'm so adamant about rituals, because generational curses thrive in chaos. And when you start to ritualize your life, it anchors in not only new patterns of behavior, it anchors in a new identity and a new timeline. So that's the reason why I'm like, you all create your rituals. Be honest and open about participating in your rituals so that you can change your life and anchor in a different frequency so you can change direction. Because the more that you get away from the chaos that generational curses bring, the better your life will become. And see, rituals are also subconscious, the part of your mind that carries your lineage's emotional memory. They use movement, touch, breath, imagery, and intention, which are the languages the subconscious actually understands. You can tell your mind that you deserve more 1,000,000 times, but if your body is still braced in survival, the curse continues. Rituals shifts that. Rituals softens what was hardened. Rituals open what was closed. Rituals restore what was forgotten. Rituals also reawaken the feminine energy, the part of you that knows how to receive, surrender, trust, and be supported. The mother womb suppresses the feminine. Ritual resurrects her. And as the feminine rises, wealth flows because wealth is not attracted through force, it is attracted through openness. Finally, rituals create consistency. Curses survive in chaos, emotional numbness, and neglect. Healing thrives in rhythm. Every time you perform a ritual, you deepen the new pattern. The old one slowly dissolves. Rituals become a new inheritance for the next generation, a new emotional blueprint that says, in this family, we tend to ourselves. In this family, we heal. In this family, we receive. The moment you begin breaking a motherless lineage, you step into the role of the feminine restorer. You become the woman who brings softness back into the bloodline that only knew survival. You become the woman who brings emotional connection back into the lineage that only knew silence. You become the woman who brings boundaries and worth back into a lineage that only knew self-sacrifice. You become the woman who invites wealth into a lineage that only knew struggle. You are not just healing yourself, okay? Because I know that when we're going through the process of healing and processing all this information and trying to change and shift into a new timeline, we tend to believe that it's only going to affect us. But this is not just going to affect you. You are healing the woman who came before you. Women who never had the luxury of rest, of softness, of pleasure, of support, of abundance. You are healing the daughters who will come after you, daughters who will grow up with a mother who is emotionally whole, spiritually rooted, financially empowered, and deeply self-honoring. This is why you are the chosen daughter, because you are capable of seeing what the women before you couldn't. You are capable of stopping what they couldn't. You are capable of receiving what they couldn't. And you are capable of becoming what they prayed for. So I'm going to pause right there because I know that this is a heavy conversation. I have to give you a moment to let it root in, let it sit in. And I'm going to check into the live stream, the chat, just to make sure where we are. And if you have any questions or comments or something you want to add to this, that would be perfect. Because I know that when I took on the spiritual requirement, the spiritual direction of being the curse breaker, I did think that at one point it would just affect me. That this will only make sure that I would come out on the other side, because I would begin to reject the curse. And what I have seen, being that person, being the chosen daughter, being the curse breaker, being the black sheep, I have seen some wonderful things come out of that. I've had some of my own family members come to me and say, "Hey, I see you doing it, so I'm going to do it." And I've seen them break barriers because I broke barriers first. We don't want to be up here boo-hooing, but that is the truth of when you're dealing with a curse and it keeps repeating generation after generation because of a fracture that happened out of your control. You didn't cause it, but it is your responsibility, if that was given to you by the divine, to follow through. Let's just not, we don't want to do all this crying, okay? We don't want to do all this crying. But this is, like I said, this is something close to my heart because I've had to not just break generational curses. I've had to break generational curses because I have seen the fracture in from the feminine and the masculine. So I've had to do it on both ends of the spectrum. So basically, I've had to go in and deal with different aspects of that curse in order to get here to create wealth for myself, to create stability for myself, to create anything for myself. I had to address those things first. And so, yes, this is a heavy piece of content, piece of content that I really want to deliver, because even though something like this, normally I'll be like, well, we're going to do this behind, in my community, because I know I might start crying. And I don't want to be that person on the internet that goes viral for boohooing. But pedestal wives, chosen daughters, curse breakers, black sheeps, When a mother cannot raise her children in the way that is needed, either emotionally, spiritually, or physically, it creates a crack in the feminine line. But you are the golden thread that repairs it. You are the woman who turns generational pain into generational power. You are the one who brings the lineage back into alignment, back into softness, back into wealth, and back into wholeness. You are not repeating the story, you are rewriting it ritual by ritual. I know, let me get me something to kind of make sure. Okay. I know that if you're in the beginning of this journey, it may seem like a lot because you may have more things that are operating, more curses that you have to break, because it's not just that particular curse that could be operating in your family dynamics, and then you keep seeing it come up every time that there is another addition to the family. We may be speaking on, like, motherless children or fatherless children, in the future. But there's other types of, things that actually can affect or be a curse, and it affects the family dynamic over and over. That could be poverty. That could be crime. That could be um, toxic relationships. So there's so many different things that you may have to address. And I think it's so important that if you've been called or you've been given divine direction from the divine, that this is your calling, this is your ministry, then follow through. You'll be supported while you're on that journey. While I was on my journey of breaking this curse, and like I said, I had the curses on both sides of the aisle. So both of there's a feminine fracture and a masculine fracture within my lineage. I had to deal with both of those. And in the beginning, it felt overwhelming. It felt burdened, but I knew that at the end that I was going to be supported throughout that journey. Throughout my entire journey, there's been people, not just people, because I've talked about how I had mentors show up. I've had people show up to support me on that journey. I've had not just people, I've had money that come out of nowhere because I'm operating from alignment. When you start to operate from identity, desire, and action, alignment tends to show up. And so I'm operating in that space where money started to show up to support me on my journey of breaking that curse, or dealing with these fractures that's happening in my lineage. So now that I have dealt with them and I have set a standard, I've set a status quo, the other people that are coming behind me, not just my daughter's daughters, my brother's daughters, my sister's daughters, they are all experiencing the life without the curse hanging over their head. They're experiencing the life without that burden that curse holds, because there's a weight that a generational curse holds. If you know that you're coming from a lineage where every woman in this lineage has made the same mistake over and over and over, and you come in and you recognize the pattern, and instead of you falling into that pattern, you reject the curse and you make changes. Not only make changes, you shift timelines, you change your identity in order to become something more, so that you can handle the burden of that curse. The results will be in the lineage. You will see that others that's coming after you, they will not pick up that curse. And having that and recognizing at such a young age, I feel like it was a blessing. Even though at the time, even though I knew that I was going to be supported on that journey, it still felt heavy. Like I was 12 years old, 12 years old, already experiencing being parentified, already experiencing having responsibility, when a 12 years old girl should be out enjoying life, having experiences, getting to know who she is as a little girl. I was taking care of my siblings. Like I was stepping into mother energy for my siblings. It took me a while just to transfer from or get out of the energy of mother energy, because I had been there for so long, to the point where if I wouldn't have started dealing with these things actively, I wouldn't have the relationship that I have with my siblings. Because when you're in mother energy and not sister energy, it's a different dynamic. It's a different dynamic. And so you will be supported on this journey as the chosen daughter. You will be supported as the black sheep, as the curse breaker. If you are able to identify and hone in on the curse that is basically haunting your lineage and reject it, you will see that the people or your family members coming after you will have a new status quo, a new standard. And even if you don't, you might not get, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'll be honest with you, because I'm 45 years old. It can be a thankless journey. Some people will not see it and acknowledge it or see it or congratulate you. So if you're going on a journey thinking you're going to get congratulations, I'm sorry to break your heart that you may not get that. Only thing you will get is knowing that you've changed the trajectory of your entire lineage. You've changed the trajectory of your entire lineage from poverty or toxic relationships or mother or father wounds. So you might not get no congratulations. I think what makes mine so emotional, because I did get it. I did get the congratulations, but not from everybody. Because one of the things I've noticed, the people, and that could be the people who actually created or was actively living within the fracture, they do not congratulate you. They do not. There's a certain level of, how do I say this, jealousy that may come because you saw it and you rejected it and you changed the entire lineage's trajectory and into a whole different timeline. And so there may be some jealousy that comes with it, but that is okay. Also, that's a part of the burden of being the curse breaker, of the person who is the black sheep. But personally, I did receive some confirmation that, hey, it is because I rejected it. It is because I stood up against it. It is because that I chose a different identity and I refused to fall in the patterns of it, that some of my own family members saw what I did and followed my lead. '53 and breaking it since 2021. Yes, absolutely. So we're not repeating the story. We're going to rewrite it. Choice by choice, breath by breath, the curse ends with you. I honor you, the women on that journey, because it's not a journey for the weak, but trust you will be supported on that journey. It's just like when I used to be a teacher, it always was scary for someone to raise their hand first, to ask a question, to be that person that breaks the ice, to be that person who's willing to be confident and stand up and just put themselves out there. And that's what the curse breaker is. That's what the black sheep is. That is what the person who has identified that there is an active curse on their lineage that is following their family dynamics everywhere. And when you stand up in confidence, or maybe not in confidence in the beginning, because you gain confidence as you continue to be the curse breaker. You gain confidence when you start to stand on business and realize that I cannot fall into these patterns, because these patterns are actively haunting my family. If y'all don't know, I'm originally from South Carolina. And in South Carolina, I don't know if you all know about Gullah Geechee. Okay. I'm from that area in South Carolina. It's actually one of the languages I learned first that ended me up in like speech therapy. Okay. But being from the South Carolina, I would hear this term all the time. I don't hear it that much in North Carolina. I live in North Carolina. I moved to North Carolina when I was 8 years old. I used to hear the term called bad blood. Now, I've spoken about this in the past, but I kind of Just stop speaking about it because people are so freaking sensitive. They, got really triggered when I did a video about bad blood. Bad blood is a term given to these families who hold a generational curse that continues to haunt the family dynamics over and over and over. And I heard it more in South Carolina. And that's the reason why I still use it to a certain degree when it comes to like vetting men to understanding what bad blood is. Because when a generational curse has its hold on a family and you decide to marry within that family, all and you don't understand the lineage or the history behind it, you could just be adding to it. You could be absolutely, not making any change to it, but just adding to it and living within that family dynamic. And you may even be like, oh, why is everybody broke over here? Oh, why is everybody in toxic relationships? Oh, why is everybody out of, alignment? Why is everybody having children all over the place? Why is everybody, having broken relationships and situationships? And you don't understand how bad blood works. Bad blood works because of the fact there's no one that has, and I'm not going to say, it's not true. That's not true. It's not true that no one hasn't been given direction. Someone has been given divine direction in order to break the curse, but that someone has either fallen into the patterns and bad habits of their families and decided that it wasn't worth the burden of trying to break the curse. And so it continued on. And so that's the reason why I love that term, because I think there's some truth to it, because there are some generational curses that operate in family dynamics. And when you like marry into that, that is something you have to deal with. And if you're not a person who has a spiritual gift of pattern recognition, you might not recognize. That's the reason why I'm so adamant about you knowing about the family. Like I wish we would just say, hey, let go of this idea that you're just marrying a person. You're marrying into a family that has their own family dynamics. They also may have their own generational curses. So just stack that up with your own generational curses that you may have in your family. And then you marry into another family that also has bad blood. And it's not going to end well. But I think that is so important to understand how these family dynamics can get caught up in these curses over and over and over. Like, and you might think even to yourself that I don't even know what type of curses that she's referring to. I want you to think about, and I'm giving you an example of this. I want you to think about the family where every young woman in the family has had a baby at the age of 15. Every woman in the family has had a baby at the age of 15. That is a generational curse. That is a generational curse. Let's say every woman in the family has had toxic relationships. That is a generational curse. Let's say every family has never experienced abundance. That is a generational curse, because it is continued patterns over generation after generation that is in the lineage. And so what we do as a person who is a curse breaker, a person who is the black sheep, what we do, we think that we can do what that person did, but not recognize the pattern in it. And that is the worst thing you can do if you're operating from, I want to break the generational curse that is haunting my family lineage, that's haunting my bloodline, where every woman is getting involved in this type of situation, or every son is getting involved in this type of situation. You do not break curses in that way. All right, so I'm just looking to see if there's any comments that people want to add, or any questions that you want to add to the conversation. But okay, now I can see it better. Okay. But if your goal is to become the first wealthy woman in your family, regardless of the generational curse that is burdened to your family, or hounding or haunting your family dynamics, then it is so important that you start looking at the identity and the patterns that are showing up over and over and over. You have the clues that you need to identify a curse in your family. You also have the divine downloads that you were given, that this is a curse on your family. And see, the thing about when it comes down to a feminine fracture that in the lineage that created the curse in the first place, is because of the energy that the mother is carrying, the mother has. See, the mother represents energetically nurturing, receiving, emotional safety. And so when the mother doesn't raise her children, or maybe she's just not available emotionally or spiritually, then the woman, the little girl, starts to believe that her needs are too much, that she must do everything, that if she needs something, it's a burden. And unmothered little girls have a receiving wound. The daughter becomes hyper independent, over responsible, emotionally self-sufficient. And this means what happens, she can attract money, but she can't receive or hold it, because wealth requires openness, rest, receiving, pleasure, regulation, all feminine coded. Unmothered little girls end up with that identity, and it keeps them from being able to bring in the wealth that they desire. So that's the reason why it's so important that we correct and identify the curses operating in the lineage, because it can prevent us from actually having money or wealth in the way that we desire. And I experienced this myself. That's one of the reasons why not only did I go, realize that there is some type of curse on the lineage at 12, but I started doing the deeper work when I started to get older and realized it not just the curse it doesn't just affect your lifestyle overall, it also affects your money. And so since I had to do it on both ends, because when it comes down to the feminine fracture in the lineage, the feminine fracture creates a issue where she can't receive it or hold it. But the masculine fracture creates an issue where you can't, it's about how you feel about money that affects it. And so I'm going to possibly talk more about the other side of the coin if there's a masculine fracture also. All right, so I'm pausing here just to see if anyone has anything you want to add or any type of questions. Okay. All right, so that is all that I wanted to have this conversation about. I'm going to go ahead and drop down at the end of this video. I'm going to drop my free school community, where we are addressing the 2026 pillars of the Pedestal Wife Society on social media, on YouTube. I am helping, but in the school community, I am leading. And there's two different energies. So if you want to join my free school community, I'm going to also leave that link. It's going to be at the end of this video. I don't really, it's like you have a peek into my life. Well, we're all on a somewhat similar frequency. So I'm going to be attracting women who actually have these issues, who deal with these things within their bloodline. Like I said, it's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that you can blame yourself about, because these are things that happen that's out of your control. But we want to focus on the things that will break these curses so that you can create the identity of that wealthy woman, of that feminine, that woman that's living life on her own terms, that woman that has a high value life. But I realized I had so many blocks, and some of those blocks weren't the ones that I created. It's the ones that were internal. It's the ones that I inherited. And when you start to realize that, you're like, oh, there's some work that has to be done behind the scenes. And I'm not scared of doing soul care in order to have a better life. So if there isn't anything that anyone wants to add, I'm going to go ahead and get ready to close us out. I appreciate you ladies for being here all the way to the end. Thank you for being a part of the Petal's Wife Society and supporting us on this journey, especially with 2026 coming up, and we're going into transformation. We're going to focus on transformation and bringing in 25,000 new women into transformation, into an up-leveled lifestyle, not just a lifestyle a lifestyle that we'll be proud of. So I don't see anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream. I will see you all on the next one. You all enjoy your day. Bye.